Good evening and welcome to another edition of Speaker Circle. This evening, I am beyond elated to speak to you about a topic that I'm super passionate about. And I have with me a Gallup Poll certified StrengthsFinder coach, Miss Gaylynn Fields. Good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Thank you so much for being a guest. And most importantly, thank you for sharing your talents, your strengths with us. So,
Welcome.
for our audience, tell us a little bit about yourself and what is Strength Finders?
Well, I am a person, just a regular person like everybody else who fell in love with strengths. About 11 years ago, I was introduced to the concept, and like most people, 3 days of studying this, I'm thinking, what am I going to get out of this? How is this going to be helpful? And it changed my life. And since then, I've had everyone who comes across the threshold of my house to take the Strength Finders assessment. I have coached about 400 people
Wow.
in Strength Finders and through their top 5 or their full 34 strengths. And just this year, I became certified by Gallup in the concept of strengths. And
That's
so thank
huge.
you. Yes.
Congratulations. That's a great
Thank you.
accomplishment.
Thank you. And I was able to, so after getting certified, I thought, well, I'll start my own business and doing it. And so now I'm a certified coach, and strengthfields.com is where I am and where I lead my coaching sessions from.
Great. Now, why Strength Finders versus Enneagram or DISC or
Ah,
all the different ones that are out there, right? For those who are not familiar with them, these are all personality assessment tests. So, what
yeah.
about Strength Finders?
Well, the personality assessment tests, I think a lot of them are really great. And I don't think you should just do one because they come from different angles and different aspects. But I like the Strength Finders the best because it gives you 34 different talents that they describe. And so it pinpoints you so much more specifically and so much
Mhm.
better than I think the other assessments. You get some generalities from those, but this one gets so much more specific that I like the dynamics and the details that you get out of the Strength Finders assessment.
Wow. And speaking of which, and just in full disclosure, I have taken the Strengths Finder assessment and I have to agree with you. And it's nothing that I did prior to even knowing how
Yeah.
phenomenal you are. It really does. And I love how it breaks down what a talent is
Yeah.
versus a personality because people don't realize that and you might be able to elaborate more, like what is it about talents that help you develop these strengths?
So I like to call it your God-given talent. Your God-given talent and who you are and how you think and feel are your common sense. And what do we know about common sense? It's not that common. Everybody has their own set of common sense, but
Yeah.
the Strength Finders assessments pinpoint how you think and your go-to, and they call that your dominant strengths. So what's at the top of your assessment, your top 5, your top 10 are going to be your dominant strengths. And that's going to help you, knowing that will help you know how you think on a regular basis and how you make decisions. It's your natural way of thinking. I use the assessment very often. It's if you're right-handed, it's like writing with your right hand. Whereas working with your non-dominant strengths, it's like working with your left hand. You can do it. It's possible, but it's not very natural and it's not the way you would normally go. So that's the easiest way I can give to think about what it means to have dominant strengths versus non-dominant strengths and how that relates to talent. Now, talent is what you're given, and you're just born with talent, the talents that you have. But a strength is when you hone that talent.
Wow.
So even a child who can't write may have a dominant right hand, but then they practice and they practice and they practice, and that's how they learn to write with their right hand. And if they perfect that, they're into script and calligraphy. And I mean, you can really go far with the steadiness of your penmanship and if you practice. And that's how your talents become strengths.
Wow, and then you get the tools you need, like a Lamy fountain pen or something so
Yes.
fancy, and
Mhm.
you're able to really develop those strengths, so that's powerful. Now, how do you know if something is naturally your
Hmm.
God-given talent versus is there some type of indicator you can tell?
The key indicator that I like to use is those things in which you lose time. If you
Mm.
find yourself you're looking at your timepiece, your clock, your watch, and 5 minutes have passed and it feels like it's only been a minute, or an hour has gone by and you feel like you just started. At that point, you should think, what strength was I using? Because you are
Mhm.
using the strength and you're operating in it. It's something that comes natural to you and you feel at peace and you feel very accomplished when you're using your strengths. If you are in the struggle, you are probably in the bottom five of your
Okay.
34. If it's
That's
hard for
good.
you to do it or you're really, having a hard time, even though it's something you have to accomplish, you
Mhm.
may be using your bottom five to try to accomplish it. And it's like that writing with the left hand. So
Mhm.
knowing your strengths, the top and the bottom, help you to get out of that churn. One of my fellow strengths coaches calls it the dirty 30. 30 through 34. If you're in that 30 through 34, you want to immediately get out of that because you're losing time and you're creating a energy drain for yourself. And so it's so much better to know and regroup. Okay, let me direct my top strengths and get this same task done.
That's powerful. And I think it's just a testament to just our conversation. I was sharing with you that there are 4 quadrants. And for those of you who need to learn more about it, you've got to check out our website.
Uh-huh.
But I have a lot of relator things, and our conversation was effortless. We literally had a pre-interview before we went live. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so easy. And it felt comfortable. So for me, it does help me to know that this truly is my strength. I love talking to people, I love connecting with others. And that's what my assessment showed. So,
Mhm.
how does a coach help you take this knowledge and transform it to, as you like to say, a superpower?
Yes. So in coaching, we have a concept that we call name it, claim it, and then aim it. And so
Mm,
you name your strength, you learn what the words mean, what the Gallup assessments language or lingo, what it means to be a relator or to have a relationship builder theme or a strategic theme. You learn all that when we're talking about naming your strength. Then the next part is claiming your strength. What if you have a strength and you're thinking, well, really, that's not me, or I don't want that strength. I would rather have this one. That's how a coach is able to talk to you about, let's talk about what you do have. Let's talk about when you had a fantastic day because you were able to use that strength. And in those conversations, we began to get you to claim your strengths and really appreciate what you have and begin to love your own strengths the way you have them. And then the third step is to aim your strengths at a particular goal or particular challenge so that you understand what you're going to use in your toolbox to pull out to aim your strengths toward that goal or challenge and give you some partnership in trying to approach and attack that situation. And it's not, there's a degree of accountability in it, but we're coaching you. So you're steering and we're riding in the passenger seat. And you are taking us on a journey to get your goal accomplished. But we're there to say, okay, are you in your bottom or are you in your top? How
mm,
about this strength? Or maybe let's use your connectedness in this way. Maybe how about thinking about using your positivity to show up differently? So those kind of things are where a strength coach is very valuable and can really help.
I have to agree with you because even in our conversation, I know with the Gallup, once you finish the assessment, they give you all
Yeah.
this material to read. But
Mhm.
having someone who can really digest it and relate it to your life, I mean, you gave me some powerful examples in our short conversation, our pre-interview of this, and
Mhm.
I never looked at it like that. And I was sharing with you when I first saw my results, I thought, well, a lot of my strengths may be looked upon as weaker or too easygoing. And how you said to me, you have to level up those talents to be your superpower and to aim them. So
Yes. Yes.
really
So,
appreciate
so talking about strengths as a superpower, they become that superpower, and as they magnify themselves, as they multiply, because
you.
when two strengths get together, they don't just add; they exponentiate. So
Mm.
your positivity mixed with your connectedness or with another strength becomes a whole different thing as they mesh together. So even the Gallup assessment that you have, the first few pages have colored blocks.
Yeah.
Those colored blocks are unique to you, because
Mm.
that is an assessment where they mix your top 5 together, and they were very clever about doing that. So I recommend to everyone, really read those blocks on the assessment, because that gives you another key indicator of how you specifically may show up. And then on the following pages, it gives you indicators where you may be overdoing it. And overdoing it takes your strength to a challenge. So you have to be careful about pushing too far. I call it using your strength as a sword or a shield. You never want to do that. And so you want to make sure that you're not walking around yielding this sword and just hacking
Mm.
everybody else up with your strength, because it's your strength and this is how
Right.
you think. Well, everybody has strengths. So we have to respect that everybody has a strength, and that's how you do it, by knowing all the strengths. And a coach would help you to understand that. Or if you're having a conflict with a person, a coach will help you be able to navigate those conflicts and identify, so that you can be more empathetic and compassionate towards what that other person is, and understand how their strengths work. So even if that person is a boss and I don't know how to relate to my boss, I can never get through to them, a strengths coach can help you to navigate that and figure that out. So it works at work, and it also works at home in navigating those difficult conversations with family as well. Because a lot of times we're very adamant about our strengths, because
Yeah.
they're our common sense. And so when you know why someone else is showing up that way, you can address it differently right off the bat.
That is powerful, as you said, not only in the professional setting, but in the personal setting. And you mentioned something earlier about even the parental setting,
Yes.
having that. And how would you encourage parents to use strength finders to kind of join their children's journey? And how, instead of, I feel like parents kind of say, okay, I'm the parent, this is
Right.
it. This.
I'm the
So
boss.
how does strength finder help to integrate that and really foster that communication with your kids?
Well, strengths are not inherited.
Mm.
They're uniquely given to each one of us. And so your
Wow.
children's strengths may show up completely different than yours. And if you're dominating because you are the authority, and now you're imposing upon your children, do it this way, do it that way, you may be in their bottom 5, or making them operate in their bottom 5 just because that's the way you do it. When really knowing your strengths and their strengths, there may be a different way to go about it that helps them to apply their strengths and become more confident, more validated in the way they do what they do. The goal is the same. I mean, and we're talking about something as simple as making your bed every day. You're having that struggle getting your child to make their bed every day. What is the problem? Why won't they make their bed? Well, maybe they don't have responsibility like you do.
Mm.
Maybe they don't have discipline the way you do. So you have discipline into you. It's just what? We're going to make this bed. I mean, this is just what you do every day, or that habit.
That's
I'm
really
not
wonderful.
saying you let them out of good practices. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying there's another way that might need to show up. You may need to appeal to their consistency, to say,
Mm.
let's create a pattern. So every day by 8:30, you're going to make your bed, because that's the pattern now, is the time. Not
Right.
just making your bed, but it's the time in which you do it. And that will create the consistency.
And that could really change the dynamic of how your kids respond.
Absolutely. All of that fighting, fussing, and arguing over trying to get them to do things that to you you just got to do it because that's the way to do it. There may be a different way to communicate with them, and to get them to see the need to do these things when you appeal to their strengths. And so for children, there is a child's assessment that can be taken. But I say when to know if your child can take the adult version is when they can assess the difference between love and like. When
Mm.
someone likes you versus someone loves you, because there's a question about that in the assessment that can come up. And if the child, doesn't know the difference between being loved or being liked, then it's too hard. But at around that 12, 13 age, usually around that teenager age, they're fine to take the adult one, even as the assessment is geared towards work. They still could take that because they're used to having peers, and they have to work with their co-students, their students and peers at their school. So on a project or something, you get to know how do you, and they can answer those questions based upon those experiences.
That's powerful. And I wish that I had that kind of knowledge when you're younger, because
Yeah,
it'll help you really to maximize relationships and how you do things. And also, it can help with bullying, insecurities.
yes.
If your parents, and I mean this in the most respectful way, I mean, I'm someone's parent, but sometimes kids can feel bullied by their parents, to your
Oh,
point. If they're dominant, or they are, you mentioned another one that you shared me, that you're a maximizer,
maximizer.
something like that. And then if you feel like that's too much, then it
Yes.
will you retreat and be less vocal or connective.
Uh-huh.
Where understanding your kids' strengths, I think, is the most vulnerable place to be, because
Mhm.
now this is someone that you're like, I'm in charge of you for sure, but
Mhm.
I'm trying to maximize your strengths and talents. And if
Mhm.
you do find that out early, is that a great way to help develop that?
Absolutely, absolutely. You to help them find their ways to navigate the world is the goal. How are
Mm,
they going to navigate as adults? And if you can help to guide them through that so that they can be more confident in how they show up in a situation and understand how not only do they show up more positively, but when something negative happens, to be able to identify what is happening here. Maybe
mm,
someone is rubbing up against your top 5 strengths. That's the issue. It's not that they are uh, bullying you. Maybe you're feeling a little bit out of
insecure.
sorts or insecure
Mm,
because it's rubbing up against your strengths the wrong way. Harmony is a good example. So a person who has harmony, a child who has harmony, they are really taken out of their element when the situation or the circumstance is not harmonious. And they feel like what I call nails on the chalkboard happening because everybody is not operating in harmony.
yeah.
So they may shy back from that situation or not feel included. Includer is another one, not feeling included. There are a
Mm,
whole lot of ways in which the strengths can have a 180 out effect if you don't know how to recognize them. And then you're having what I call a bad day at work. So you have
wow.
a bad day at school for a child because the room is not in harmony, or the teacher is struggling to take hold of the classroom. That child is having a bad day because of that, even though they're not a part of it, because they're observing it. So
Mm,
when you know that this is your child's circumstantial situation, do you change their classroom? No, no, because the world is always going to have stuff like that.
yeah.
You teach the child how to navigate. When this happens, how are you feeling when that happens? Okay, how about this? And you create other mindsets and other strategies for that child in their strengths so that they can navigate the world more successfully. It's so much easier than
That's
just
game
trying to
changer right
power
there.
through, just trying to power through and just get the grades, get the grades, get the grade, or whatever it is, just go to school, get up in the morning, all these things can be approached in a different way if there's a struggle.
And I think that's life and changing for parents who have maybe multiple children. You're like, why is it? Can't you be more like your brother or your sister or what? Instead of saying that, say, be more of who you are. Let's find your
Yeah.
strengths and maximize that. Now, how do you transfer this into romantic relationships? Let's say you are married or you're dating someone and you see their strengths. Is there some point where it's like, okay, we're not compatible. We don't need to be dealing with it. Or do you feel like Strengths Finders gives you that understanding where you can make any strengths work together if you know how to do the mix?
Well, since I've done some conflict coaching
Mm,
and I've done some coaching with some married couples, with them together, not with them in conflict so much,
mhm.
but their strengths are different. And we
Yeah.
talk about it very often. How do you make this work when you have strengths that are natural colliders? Well, once you recognize it, then you show up differently. So I think everybody should get a strengths assessment before you get married. Not so that you can decide whether you're getting married or not getting married, but you're just trying to decide how we're going to navigate this every
Yes.
day.
Yes.
So if you have a good example of that, if you have a spouse that has something like deliberative, they need to think. They need to think, if you're expecting, here's this question, give me the answer right now. You can forget it. You're not going to get a good answer from that person because that's not how they manage. You need to lay that question down, give them a minute
Wow.
or a day, and then come back and you're going to get a brilliant answer. But if
Mm.
you're pressuring them, you're not going to get good answers that day. So can you imagine the amount of stress that would be relieved if you knew that already about that person?
Yeah.
Where people who have like activator, they're like, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's do it. And what's the direction? Doesn't matter the direction. Let's just keep going, you know. And that just buzzing all around. And the deliberative person, they're on the opposite ends of the spectrum. But in a couple, sometimes we need the activation. We need to get up and go. And sometimes we need to think and deliberate about this and make a well thought out decision. So at times you have to, the navigation becomes what do we need to do in this particular case? Do we need a quick decision or do we have the time to let it navigate itself out? And knowing which spouse leads or makes a decision at that time, it helps you to alleviate some of the complexity of the decision making or how we're going to handle life, because your upbringing and common sense and that person's upbringing and common sense just multiplies the amount of times that we have a difference of opinion. But if we now know how to leverage one another's strengths for the good of our relationship, then it can work out fantastic.
And that's what can sustain you after the whole warm and fuzzy
Oh,
wears
yes.
off, right?
Absolutely. And it will. So, that time is coming. So it's best to know how to navigate that when it happens. Mhm.
I love that. Now, in a business setting, when you're having to do collaborative things, and maybe you don't have the ability to have everyone in your organization to have strength finders, what
Mhm.
are some tools would you recommend to people how they can kind of identify
Yes.
people's
So
personality?
so leaders, I think it is very awesome as a leader to have your strengths assessment and to have the strength assessment of the folks that you're supporting you, because then you know how to pull out of them what is necessary at that time. If you're
Mm,
constantly asking your employees to show up in ways that are in their bottom 34, they're not having a good day at work and
yeah.
they're not as productive. And just knowing the strengths and how they work multiplies the communication by 6 times. Now, I'm
Wow.
not making that up. That's a Gallup certified coach thing. They have done millions of assessments and they know how this works. And so to be able to communicate better internally to your team, but also one employee to another, because it helps the communication. Things like, I like to be organized and have everything a certain way. And yet the person's desk next to me is just sheer chaos. Well, that can bring a bad day.
I'm laughing because that could be my desk.
That person who likes that organization could have a bad day. And let's just say they also have relator. Now they're saying, you purposefully are not cleaning up your desk. Well, really, is the person purposely not cleaning up their desk? They're not thinking about you. They're over there with their set of strengths.
Yeah.
But to have this conversation and have the language and be able to bring out that, I have this discipline. So I like for my desk to be in an orderly fashion every day. And your stuff spilling over into my space is really messing with my discipline. So can we talk about how we're going to resolve that? It brings another set of language without being confrontational or without being difficult or without accusing and judging that person. And
Mm.
that person can then come back and say, okay, I get it. You have discipline. So let's do this, let's do that. So even if everybody doesn't have the strengths and everybody doesn't understand it on a team, which was your original question, how do you navigate that? Well, you lead from where you are, leading from where you are,
I love
and you can pose your questions and your thoughts to be respectful of another person's strengths because you don't know what they are, but you do know that they're different from yours, and that makes you less judgmental of other people when you realize, oh, there's millions of combinations of how this thing could play out, and since everybody's is different, I would like for people to respect my combination. So I must respect the combination of others. And like we talked about in the pre-conversation too, there's no excuse for not being kind. Just being kind to people. But this helps you to be kind because it helps you to be more understanding.
That, that
why another person, more empathetic.
Wow. Now, have you had when you're coaching situations where people are they get the results, they're like, you know what, I really don't want to be this deliberate, or I feel like I'm obsessing over this, and they wanting to change your behaviors. Do you recommend that, or are you like, hey, let's just embrace what you have and maximize it?
So of my 400 and something people, I've had one guy who said, I still don't think after the session, I still don't think I have that. Yet everyone on his team was like, yeah, he's exactly that. So he would need a personal coaching session to get him to understand and be able to identify it. I'll give you this one example. There was a lady that I worked with at one point, and she had harmony as one of her strengths, but she was not a harmonious person at work. That wasn't happening. No one would describe her as harmony, but she was very harmonious at home in
Mhm.
bringing her family together and making sure that everybody stayed in communication and sending out cards and doing all these things. So she was able to apply her strength at home, but she didn't feel like it was a comfortable environment. Um, Displaying her harmony at work because it make her appear to be weak.
I
So she
know.
did not let her harmony be seen. Well, after we had this whole conversation, she felt safer letting her harmony show. So yes, there are people who won't show up with their strengths because of a some reason that they're thinking it shouldn't apply, or they may not even believe that they have it. I mean, when I first got the strength finder assessment, learner is in my bottom. I mean, the bottom, and I thought, what does that mean? Do I not want to learn? Do I not? No, what it means, interestingly enough, is my top five strengths with analytical and arranger, these things are churning so much, so much, so much that you throw another piece on top of that, and it just increases the churn. So I don't have this desire to bring in all of this unnecessary like trivia information. Oh no, that's not for me. Because added to what I'm already churning
Yeah,
about,
that makes
it
sense.
just becomes over. Yeah. So it's not that I don't want to learn, but what I do learn, I want to learn it. I want to master what I do
And
have and,
analyze it
and
and match.
analyze it and ask all the questions and turn it upside down and turn it sideways and look at it all these different ways. So I don't need to continually add a whole lot more information to that puzzle. Now, once I understood that, then it made it so much more palatable for me to be able to say, yeah, learner's in my bottom, and I'm okay with that.
Wow.
Mhm.
Now, another thing I know with this 2020, people have had so many uncharted
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
things that have happened to them, including changing industries, losing jobs. Would you recommend someone who is kind of back into, I'm starting at ground zero. What should I do? Is the Strength Finders a good way? Like, do you help people figure out their most, um, the best career path they should take, or someone who's straight out of school who has to figure out what they should do?
So what I'm gonna say is aligning your strengths and your career is not something that I recommend.
Oh.
What I'm gonna say is because your strengths do not dictate your skill or
Mm,
your education. So let's just say, for instance, you're an employer and you're looking for someone who is going to be able to show up with a positive attitude and this and that and whatever. So you decide, oh, I'm going to pick somebody who has positivity. You might get the 180 out effect. You may get someone that's totally negative because their positivity is being bombarded in other arenas. And so you may not get what you think you're going to get. So you don't ever want to hire or select people based on strengths. Likewise, you don't want to take your strengths and say, now look, if you don't like kids, don't work with kids. That's just kind of, that has nothing to do with your strengths.
yeah.
You do want to do something that you enjoy doing. But let's just say your strength is, I don't know, let me pick another one that I haven't talked about before, developer. Say
Mm,
you have a strength of developer. Well, you would think, okay, developing children, developing students, maybe being a teacher, or maybe being a counselor, maybe that is true. But you can also overdevelop because in order to develop people, they have to want to be developed.
that's true.
What happens when they don't want to be and you're constantly trying to do it? You're having a bad day every day that happens, and not just a normal bad day, a superpowered bad day because this is your superpower. And now you're trying to apply it to that situation and it's not working out for you because you won't have a win every time. when you're
Yes.
trying to develop people. So that becomes, that could be a little edge, and some people may not be able to handle that. So I wouldn't say just because you have developer, go into a career of developing people. No, whatever career you have, you're going to develop people anyway.
Mm, wow.
You're
Because you're
going to,
right.
or your developer may be applied to processes or things. So you may want to develop processes, and it might float your boat. If that works for you, great. But don't say, okay, let me look at my strengths assessment and pick my career based upon my strengths assessment. No, apply your strengths wherever you are with whatever you enjoy doing. That's the best way to go about it.
Wow.
Mhm.
That is what apply your strength. So it's better, it's kind of like use what you have right now.
Yes.
Find the wins in your space right now.
Yes. Wherever you find yourself, apply your strengths to your best ability in that space.
Gaylynn, you've given us some great information. I know I've taken the Strength Finder, it's changed my life. Who exactly is the right person to take this assessment?
Mm. So everybody, you knew I was going to say that. Everyone is the right person to take the Strength Finder assessment. Again, I would say that children or youth that can understand the difference between love and like is the youngest age, but there is no oldest age. There is no unreasonable person or work or ethnicity or any of that. All of it applies. I recommend that anybody and everyone who can take it, whether you're in a work situation or whether you're at home, retired or whatever, can benefit from Strength Finders, from knowing your strengths, being able to name them, claim them, and aim them.
I love it. I love that you even said retired. It doesn't matter where you are. You
Mhm.
can name them, aim them. I mean, name them, claim them, and aim them.
Yes.
Now, your website is how everyone can get in contact with you. I mean, New Year coming. For those
Yes.
of you who have those things, 2020 may have made you reflective. Learn your strengths and figure out how to empower yourself. On your website, can they actually buy or get a copy of the Strengths Finders? How does that work?
So through Strength Fields, which is my website, strengthfields.com, you can purchase the 34 assessment at a discounted rate, as well as get your hour of coaching all in one package. Now, if you go to the Gallup certified or the Gallup site, you can get a strengths assessment there for the 5 or for the 34, but you don't get the coaching that comes along with it. And that part is really kind of critical. So if you already have your strengths assessment, then you can also go to strengthfields.com and just purchase the coaching to help you get launched in your name it, claim it, and aim it. And then you don't have to purchase the assessment with it when you get that coaching.
Well, that sounds like a great package deal. And I'm really big, and that's why we have a speaker circle. I'm big about personal development and growth.
Yeah.
We invest a lot of time in things that are, I mean, your car, you think about you get new tires, you get oil changes, timing belt, all this stuff. But when it comes to your life and your personal growth and development, having a coach is what's going to level you up. So I just want to thank you for this invaluable service that you provide for everyone. It's life changing. I know having this knowledge about my strengths and my bottom areas really has changed my perspective about things. And it's really helped me open up to not feel so, if someone doesn't rock or their strength is not like you don't feel some type of way about it, I guess.
Right, right.
Kind of join people's journey and meet where they are.
Mhm.
Well, as we wrap up from this phenomenal interview, what are some of your parting tips or things that you would love to give to our
Mhm.
audience?
Well, my parting tips are get your strengths assessment. It is so vital to know how to operate with your dominant themes so that you can have a very good day every day. And to also get to know the strengths of people in your circle and in your environment so that you can help them have a better day and improve your communication with them, whether that's in the workplace or in the home with your spouse, your children, your parents, whatever. Know people and improving your communication is just going to make life better on a daily basis. So, my suggestion is to get to understand your strengths so that you can have that great day every day.
I love that. Have that great day every day. Because isn't that what life's about? You get
It
out,
is.
You want to make the day great. Gaylynn, thank you very much for sharing your strengths, your talents with us today, and offering such a service to help everyone else be empowered to communicate better. And thank you all for watching another episode of Speaker Circle. It's just enriching all of your comments and your engagement. Let's continue to grow together. Don't forget to check out Gaylynn's website, strengthfields.com, and get your assessment done so that you can have an epic 2021. Thanks again, Gaylynn.
Thank you. It was an honor. Had a good time.
I enjoyed